everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Andrew and very excited today to have a great mentor that's come into my life here in the last year or two, Kevin Tucker. I'm going to say it right and I'm going to get laughs on this from half of everyone at DC 480. But Kevin, I'm going to push it to you for a quick introduction on who you are.
Yeah. So Kevin Tooker, currently the director of cybersecurity at HyeTech, which is a local services shop, full MSSP. But I've been in IT and technology for going on 27 years now, which is crazy to me. Most of my career has still been customer side as a jack of all trades network and systems administrator, which I'm kind of proud of. But for like the last 4 to 5 years, I've been focused on primarily cybersecurity consulting roles.
No, and that brings us to the perfect channel of breaking into cyber, getting to talk to professionals who are skilled craftsmen and women in this trade. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. So, Kevin, obviously getting into cybersecurity is not always the first choice most kindergartners have when they get to draw out their future careers. They're not drawing awesome binaries, ones and zeros. But what kind of drew you to this career and kind of the passion that you're into now with working at the company and inside cybersecurity?
Yeah, so it's sort of a funny journey. The reality is, I'm sort of wired to be intellectually curious and enjoy troubleshooting and understand how things work and how things maybe could be built or made better, right? And so I sort of have an unorthodox start where I wasn't on a trajectory into IT. I was turning wrenches and doing other stuff, and it just sort of got thrown in my lap, and we were broke. So I got to start behind everybody else. I think at the time everyone was running early Pentium systems, and I was stuck with an Atari. So even though that was a badly dated technology at the time already, right? So I had kind of this cool, quick, like 1 to 2 year catch up where I got a chance to just wrap my brain around as much as I could and realize there's probably a career in this, and I enjoy it, especially the problem solving side, right? And that wiring has sort of been it, man. Like through my career, it's obviously changed tremendously over the years. Cybersecurity wasn't like a thing when I started, so
Yeah.
that's a recent thing for cybersecurity to be the industry in and of itself that it has become. And so I think throughout my career, the pattern is sort of I like to be challenged. I get bored easy, and so I had responsibilities for facets of security, especially network security, but it had never been my discipline. And so about 6, maybe 7 years ago now, I picked it up. I started looking at it like, hey, I have intellectual curiosity about this. I see a real need. A lot of people aren't wanting to pick it up for some reason. I think I maybe do. So I'm going to go nerd out a bit. And I just started digging into books and podcasts and different material and consuming content on YouTube until I got dangerous. And then once I was a little dangerous, I started having, conversations with customers and trying to consult with them. And around 3 years ago, I think is when I really felt like I got my feet underneath me. I finally felt like, okay, I don't feel like I'm just playing a cybersecurity professional on TV anymore. I'm starting to feel like I actually, have the hang of this. And so that's sort of the journey, which is not necessarily the journey that's available to people that are coming into the career now.
No, and it's funny because it's everyone's journey is different. You know, my journey obviously coming from law enforcement. There's folks in this industry that used to be librarians, they used to be teachers, they used to be in the medical field, they used to be lawyers, and everyone kind of gets into their niche or gets into this industry like in a different means. They find a hobby, they hear a cool story, they enjoy building their own home PCs and doing their home kind of like own network kind of stuff, and it's something that they maybe initially didn't initially think of like I could make this my career. Like it's like more of a hobby. And then I think the last 2 decades, probably last decade even, it's had such a huge boom on cybersecurity and the importance of it and what can actually happen when second, third order effects happen, or I don't know, an EDR sends out a misconfigured patch that closes half the airports across the US. And wow, cybersecurity is pretty important. And yeah, exactly that. I think, and we're gonna get into this probably for the next question, and it comes into why a lot of folks come to this channel sometimes is they people wanting to break into this field, and this is going to be could be a long-ended question, I guess, but for those wanting to break into the field, we'll say, not that are already in the field looking to pivot or transition. When it comes into resumes, I know you've obviously being at the level you're at, get to look at resumes, you get to help conduct the interviews, you maybe get to help sift through certain resumes or questions you want people to focus on for stuff. If you could think of the top 3 things that you think would be the best thing for candidates or folks trying to break into a basic SOC security level analyst position to have or to talk about on their resume, what would you think be the top 3 things that can maybe discuss or kind of go more in depth on?
Yeah, man. I mean, so this is tough. You're going to regret asking that question because I almost have too much to say. So first, like there's a major distinction between someone who has been in any facet of IT, and I mean any facet of IT, that wants to go into security. I think that transition is actually pretty straightforward. I mean, I could offer all kinds of input or advice around it, but I think the reality is you already, if you've been in IT for a hot minute, even if it's just help desk, even if it's just a network operations center job, even as like just a junior systems admin type of a job, you probably have started to get a sense of yourself and where your passions lie. That can then just turn into, hey, go do some basic intellectual curiosity sort of pursuit of knowledge of cyber. And there's some foundational ways that you can do that that I think are helpful. But as you do that, you'll already have a sense of where your previous work experience and knowledge contributes to what you could then maybe go tackle in cyber. And does that align to what is interesting to you at the moment? And that seems easier. Like, I think that's a path people can kind of navigate on their own. What I'm seeing a lot of right now is very different, coming out of the schools and some really good programs, in fact. So I'm not throwing shade at any of the colleges. But I see a lot of people that are trying to get into cybersecurity with no background in IT. And they're looking for, what you just described, like a SOC analyst 1 entry level job. And I have a whole bunch of different problems with this. So one, I don't think there's such a thing as like an entry level cybersecurity job. You won't know how to defend something if you don't understand how it's supposed to work. You won't know how to break something. I have a lot of students that want to be penetration testers. And it's like, how are you going to know how to break something if you don't know how it's supposed to work? So you don't know how to manipulate how you interact with it to break it, right? And even just basics like threat hunting and, certainly like detection engineering and automation orchestration in a SOC, all that kind of stuff. You have to understand how systems communicate over the digital plumbing. You don't have to be a network engineer, but you need to understand how systems communicate over the digital plumbing. You don't have to be a systems admin necessarily, but you better know how an application talks to the operating system, how the operating system talks to the hardware at a driver level, like what the file system is all about and how to comb through system logs and make sense out of what's normal and not normal. So it's just really difficult when students in school have gone through all this book knowledge around cybersecurity without any foundations in IT, and they really don't have, in the cybersecurity programs, they really don't have enough of the foundational IT stuff. So that can be, I think, a very different challenge. And it does kind of get into like how best to fill that gap. Like if anything, when I was starting, there was no information. You had to get really good at figuring stuff out yourself.
Yeah.
There wasn't much training. They just throw a PDF on your desk and say, hey, that's the new product. You're going to be taking support calls on it. Good luck.
It's funny, real quick, that you say that, Kevin. So it's like Bree Frost over at Pluralsight's cyber curriculum development team. She made the same kind of really good reference when it comes to learning and training. And
yeah.
I think it's a good piece that you kind of put to a puzzle. It's like, there's never going to be a time where you're working an incident or you're working inside an environment where it's like, there's something wrong with the router. Is it A? This is going on.
Yeah.
Is it B? Like you have to actually physically know how to go into it, troubleshoot, and understand what's happening. And I think, like you said, I think at many school levels, hey, this is a computer. This is how you plug it in. This is how you turn it on. Now it runs. It's connected to the internet. Any questions? Moving on.
Yeah.
This is a router. It's like they just like they're touching it and then like, okay, moving on. And they're just trying to throw hot words, specific key terms, and they're kind of leaving it into the aspects of the student to do the deeper research. And the real question is, and it's very easily identifiable once you get into an interview and talk to an individual that knows the ins and outs of a system, network traffic, the OSI model, how everything communicates, and then you're trying to kind of bullshit-o talk your way to how something happens or how a three-way handshake happens, and you might not fully understand it. And it's, I think, hard for folks to maybe take that huge gulp and say, hey, you know what? I think this is how it happens. I'm not 100% sure. But then walking through that steps of how you would go and like identify how it would happen and get the correct answer. But I think you're spot on the money. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. And actually, I'm glad you kind of mentioned a pet peeve of mine, the OSI model. So the OSI model is a good example of where I see, so I agree with everything you just said, but it's also a good example of where I see sort of the opposite. in the course of a cybersecurity degree program, I don't think it's necessary to go deep into the OSI model. And the reason I say that is because it's kind of used the wrong way. The OSI model was not, it was not fundamentally meant to be for you to have a clear linear understanding of how, from connection to pulling a web page down, how I'm getting that done across layers. It was interoperability. So it was literally just, hey, back in the day, Ethernet was not always Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6. You had different forms of physical cabling. That's layer one, right? Layer two signaling, Ethernet. Well, you had different options, token ring, FIDI, all this other stuff, right? Even layer three protocols, IP, like everyone just assumes IP, but I used to have to route IPX, right? It's a very different protocol. And so the thing that I think people forget is that really the OSI model was not meant to be relevant for understanding how systems communicate over the digital plumbing. It was meant to guide interoperability so that you could buy an IBM PC and connect it to a network that was also supporting, you know, clone machines and non-IBM gear, and that the network cards were all going to interoperate. The communication standards were the same. The cabling standards were the same.
Yeah.
And it's a good example of where I think they turn people off. So a lot of the cybersecurity students, I'll tell them, you know, hey, like, I don't need you to be a network engineer. You don't ever have to do what I used to do. I don't even think the job I used to do should exist the way that it used to exist. But you do need to understand how systems communicate. Like, you should be able to read a packet capture and tell what's going on. And I think one of the things that schools do that turns people off from that is they'll do like a CCNA course type of material and dig into the OSI. And for a cybersecurity person that may have no interest in network engineering, that's not fun, right? It's not engaging, and it doesn't click. It doesn't help me make sense. So one of the things, you know, all the way back to your earliest question, one of the things that I value something on a resume would be something like anti-siphon training has their SOC core skills class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that class. I don't like what they call it because it's, to me, it's not even, that's a misnomer, and it sort of undersells the value of the class. You know, it's 16 hours, half days, you know, 4 hours a day, 4 days in a row, lecture lab, lecture lab, lecture lab, all open source tooling. And they basically just walk you through, hey, something popped. This is how you would go investigate it, interrogate the machine. And they start with, let's see what the system is communicating with, right? Because you can glean so much from that. Like, oh, wow, that's interesting. It's talking to, you know, it's got what looks like DNS, UDP 53, but it's going to China, and the payload sizes are weird, and they're very repetitive. I bet that's command and control,
They
right?
happen every 3 minutes. How odd.
Yeah, how odd, right? So, you know, they show you that stuff in a context that I think someone who wants to get into cyber can appreciate and enjoy, while they also then get the value of, like, this is why I tell people, hey, go get the Network Plus from CompTIA, right?
Yeah.
Not because it's a sexy cert and not because I care about certifications, but if you read that book cover to cover, seeking understanding, you'll be able to pass the exam. So you can put a flagpole in it when you're done, and you'll have the foundational knowledge to make sense of a packet capture, right? And yeah, so that's a good example where I see it both sides. I see the schools kind of skipping stuff and just teaching buzzwords, and then I see other areas where they try to teach with more depth, but what they're really doing is not answering what the target audience's need really is. The target audience need is to understand how systems communicate, not how to build the digital plumbing, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think it might bleed into the kind of a better question that's going to lead into the education aspect of it. So, filling in the gaps. So then, certifications, hands-on experience, building home labs. What do you think is the perfect kind of like medium of each? Obviously, I think when it comes into, depending on if you're good, you have a good network, you have an in, you have a referral to get your resume through a automatic process to go in front of a manager. Certifications aren't always necessary. I call certifications getting through the HR algorithm, and same thing with rephrasing and rewording your resume per every job application you apply for. You shouldn't just have some generic one resume fits all. It should always be tailored for every job. But kind of what are your thoughts on that? Because I think, like you said, I think schoolhouses across every spectrum, depending on probably like Berkeley and some other very high-end technical places that have very well in-depth masters and other degrees to understand those more basic fundamentals. What are some good ways to kind of fill in those gaps?
Yeah, so I want to preface this and start off by saying, first and foremost, the industry has some problems here, and it's annoying. So the talent gap is not real. You wouldn't have a talent gap if you were actually looking at developing people, and that's what we used to do. So get over it, develop some people. So that's frustrating. The negative unemployment rate thing, also, that's a self-created problem, and it's sort of fictitious in the sense that I think we have plenty enough people, but there's all these filters in front of those people, and getting a human interaction, a conversation by which they could actually be assessed on the things that really matter.
Yep.
And so really what you have, and a good example, and this is an extreme example, but I mean, I've absolutely seen it, so I'm not making this up. You'll see an entry level cybersecurity job and they'll have the CISSP as a requirement.
Oh my God. I've
And,
seen
and
so
you
many
think,
of these. It's like,
and you
what?
think to yourself, like, look, man, even if I looked at it and said like, hey, that knowledge is maybe entry level to you because you're so cool in organization. Even if I had tried to give you that bone, it's still not entry level. You have to have 5 years of professional experience to get it.
To even
So,
hold the
I mean,
certification. You can't
yeah,
you can't just get that with 1 year of experience, take it, pass it. You can get 100% on the test, pass it
you
100
could be
questions.
wicked sharp. Yeah, you could be wicked sharp, totally
There's
advanced. You're
still
still not going
years
to carry it.
requirements. There's still years
Yeah.
requirements to make sure you meet the requirements to hold the certification. Yeah,
And
seeing
I literally see stuff like that. So I look at that and I think, man, we don't have a negative unemployment problem. What we have
CI,
is
CSSP, 3 SAN certifications. So you want me to have over $30,000 worth of personally
yes,
funded certifications to make this entry level job making 85 to 70, like to 85 to 75K.
yes.
Yeah, you're out of your mind.
So the few
It's
people
nuts.
that can meet the requirement, so this gets into why I don't believe the negative unemployment rate. The few people who could make the requirement, they are not incentivized to do so. Why would I do that? I've already got a lot of investment, time, energy, effort, education, expense, like actual expense, right? And now you're going to pay me next to nothing for an entry level job. Like that just
Yeah.
doesn't work. So all of that's broken. And that's on the employer's side, and that's more of an industry-wide problem. And so the first thing I always tell students or early in career folks, or even people who are retooling and changing career, just understand like it's not you. And you just got to keep your head up and keep plugging away and do your best to make human connections with people, right?
Definitely.
Because the industry will eventually figure this out and will fix itself and we'll get over it. In the meantime, I just don't want a lot of really talented people super discouraged as they try to enter the job market. That being said, everything you laid out are good examples of things that can be the difference. Like hey, how do I build a resume, especially early in career or just coming out of school? How do I build a resume that's compelling? Well, the trick is actually context. And so I think a smart hiring manager, and this isn't going to be everybody, but I think a smart hiring manager, they're interested in attitude and aptitude first. A skill set that you bring to the table is nice, but I can teach tech. I
Yeah.
can put you, if you're sharp and you know enough foundational stuff, I can embed you with a team of people. You can shadow their work. Then you start doing some work and they shadow your work. And then eventually you're a peer. And then eventually you're maybe an escalation or lead engineer on the team. So
Exactly.
there's a path there, right?
Yep.
So it's attitude and aptitude and the ways that I can validate that kind of stuff, along with maybe foundational knowledge, because I got to know at least enough to keep up and learn, right? And so the way that I validate those things is looking for like a combination of things. So as an example, if I'm looking at a student, maybe they're in a cybersecurity degree program, but they got their network plus, or maybe an A plus. Maybe they have some coding chops and some development experience or certifications, right? But there's something there foundationally that's not strictly cybersecurity that shows me they are getting foundational knowledge and they have that intellectual curiosity. And then maybe that's paired with something like the SOC core skills class, which anti-siphon training. I mean, that's the antithesis of SANS, right?
Yep.
It's pay what you can, right? So when I took that class just for my own chagrins last year, I paid handsomely for the class, knowing that that allows other people that can't afford it to be able to take it potentially for free with no hassle, right? So zero barrier to entry. But you got to have fire in the belly. You got to sign up and wait for it to come around. You got to put in the time and clear your schedule for 4 hours a day for 4 days in a week. And a lot of people just don't do it. And so if I see something like that, that tells me a bunch of things too. Not only do I know they got the SOC core skills class, which I think it's just a killer class. Like it's just a really, really good class. So I trust they learned some stuff, but also it shows me a little bit of that fire in the belly. Like
Yep.
this person has initiative, right? And so you start putting all that stuff together. You start looking at it like, hey, the degree's interesting. They've got some good book knowledge. Maybe they got a little bit of foundational IT knowledge with that Network Plus or the A Plus. Maybe they geek out on coding because that's highly relevant right now in the whole, how do I automate and orchestrate things? So maybe they have some of that. And man, if I see anything like the SOC core skills class, that's a major tell. Like this person has the fire in the belly. And then, there's this one question that's sort of the determiner for me in a call, whether or not you're a prospect that I have interest in helping, whether I'm going to hire you or I'm just going to provide guidance for now, which I do that a fair amount. And it's a simple one, or it seems like a simple one, but it's funny how few students can answer it. Give me an example, any example. It doesn't even have to be technically related to IT or cybersecurity, but take me through any time that you had to nerd out on some technical problem where you ran into all kinds of curveballs and rabbit holes, and take me through that journey and how you eventually worked through and solved whatever it was you were trying to solve. And it's a major tell to me. A lot of these students have no example. And it's because they don't, I think a lot of them are in a field that they don't even understand. And I don't know that they're going to even want to be in that field. And so that's a big delta for me. Like you mentioned the home lab thing. I asked one of my hires, a kid I picked up out of GCU that's just amazing, wicked sharp, smarter than I have ever been. Okay, this cat's amazing. And when I hired him, part of it was that in interview, when I asked him that question, there was a long, awkward pause. And I was like, oh no, man, this guy looks so good on paper. Please tell me that he's got an answer. And he's like, the problem is I don't know where to start. I said, what do you mean? And he says, well, like I have like 50 in my mind. And I was like, do tell, like just pick one. And he was like, well, in my home lab. And he starts talking about how he's built this home lab. It's all virtualized on a single system, right? He bought a pretty decent little compute platform. He's got this virtualized environment. He's been playing with VMs, and he's been, setting up different capabilities on each VM and running into problems with how they can or can't communicate within the virtualized environment. So he's got all these layers and layers of problems and how he's nerded out and solve them, fix them. And you can hear the energy come up in his voice because this excites him. Like this is fun for him. And that's when you know, like, okay, this is a person that 100% is in the right field, right?
It's so funny, the slightest questions that some people think of that aren't the most impactful, that like that's the main, like that's the golden goose ticket. Like, hey, if you kill this question, and they don't know this, but you do, like, hey, if they kill this question, they're likely going to get a second interview, they're likely going to get a job offer. But the anti-siphon training, 100% nail on the head. You should be doing that training. I'll make sure I drop the link on. I've been dropping it in most of my comments below in a lot of my videos, because the training and the pay-as-you-go is huge for folks trying to break in on a budget. But obviously, if you can pay for the course, please do. Helps those that can't fully afford those courses still get a chance to take those, and also supports the anti-siphon team building out that awesome content and giving their time to do the training. But 100% the self-time investment, how you mentioned, where it's like, hey, if I ask someone to go learn a skill, or like, hey, come back with me in 2 weeks, and let's just re-talk about how packets travel and how they connect on an application level, and then that 2 weeks comes back and it's like, hey, so what'd you learn? Well, I got really busy and I had school, and then it was my friend's birthday, and it's like, okay, so obviously it wasn't that much of a priority compared to the folks that, okay, well, in 2 weeks you take 30 minutes to an hour a day. I mean, that's all. You could take even less than that, 20, 15 minutes to go read a blog, watch a YouTube video, take a small class.
This is one of the things that bothers me about it is, and look, there's nothing wrong with it. If it's not your jam, it's not your jam. Like I don't think everyone should be in technology. I don't think the world should have to care much about technology. I think most of the population should get to use it, preferably in a secure and safe manner, right? Without ever having to understand anything about what's going on. Like that's not everyone that drives a car needs to know how to rebuild a carburetor, right? Like it just is that way.
I can put air in the tires, I can gas it up, and I can change the oil, and replace my wiper blades. That's about all.
So I can't handle that. I have to geek out on literally everything. So I geek out on that stuff too, even the old internal combustion engine stuff. But it doesn't have to be your jam. And if it's not your jam, I think being honest with yourself about that earlier is helpful. And so I wouldn't feel bad if I'm one of those people that went to school, maybe even already got the degree, and then I have an interview with someone like me. And in the course of that discussion, I start to realize I don't actually want to do this, right? There's ways to pivot. Cybersecurity degrees, you could be in GRC or something and not even be a technical cybersecurity or IT person, right? There's all kinds of different jobs. So I think trying to find that. And then I always encourage people, in my interviews anyway, there's no right or wrong answer to any of the technical questions or like what I'm trying to learn about how a person thinks. It's different people have different strengths and weaknesses. They gravitate towards different things, different passions and pursuits, right? So really it's whatever you're interested in. So I might give someone some direction on like, hey, here's the foundation stuff you're going to need to know. And what I'm trying to do there, I was mentioning this earlier, is reduce it. Because the problem that the current generation has is very different than what I had. It's information overload now.
Yeah.
I could go study literally everything and probably for free. I could get the equivalent of a master's degree in education almost through Udemy and YouTube alone, right? So if you're in information overload mode, where do you start? And that's where I try to help anyone I talk to and explain, hey, I've gotten a sense of you through the resume and the interview. I'm going to give you 2, maybe 3 things, and that's it. And only those 2 or 3 things. And don't go boil the ocean, right? To get the foundations. But the other piece I always encourage people on is like your home lab, man, it doesn't have to be what I would build. It doesn't have to be what the people on my team would build. It doesn't need to be the stuff that my new hire was doing, right? Different strokes for different folks. If you're nerding out on development and coding and that's your jam, cool. Start playing with that. And you may start on something that's not even security related, despite the security degree, get partway through the process and start seeing all of the different ways that you could apply a cybersecurity perspective and that discipline and some tool sets to your work as a developer, right? That's one of the other technical questions I ask is sort of around that whole dynamic of like code security, web app security, got a database backend behind that web app. What are some things I need to worry about, right? You could get into API security, the security of the programmable interfaces themselves for all the automation orchestration people are doing, right? So you kind of got to pick your own journey, and the easiest, best way I can tell people to do it is whatever you are naturally inclined to go nerd out on, whatever puts, energy back in your batteries, just go do that. And don't worry about the rest. Like you'll find the path. You don't need to look for the path to find it. It'll come.
Yeah, and I think I got 2 more questions for you, Kevin, and we'll kill it with our last and final golden question that is my favorite to ask. But it's nothing crazy. You'll like it. But there's gonna be a time when Kevin's gonna want to retire. There's gonna be a time where Angie wants to retire. And you mentioned it before, and I think it's like gatekeeping is one thing that we try to stay away from within, I think, cybersecurity. I've been in organizations where there are gatekeepers, and getting to share and kind of like explain that knowledge, I think, is huge. And I think we've kind of hit that nail on the head. But when it comes to, I think we mentioned before, networking and kind of building out a strong group and environment of like-minded folks, being around smarter people than yourself, finding that mentor to kind of give you advice, bounce ideas off of. I found that to be probably a bigger piece of a puzzle that a lot of folks probably in the last 5-6 years are missing. Even when I got back into it about 8 years ago, I was lucky enough to have my mentors through the military and cyber that I could pick from. But I know I recently started kind of providing mentorship this last 6 months, talking to tons of different individuals. And I'm an extroverted Tigger personality IT guy. I like to talk. I feel like I have decent communication skills, and I thrive to it. I enjoy talking to people about it. I get excited. I am not the recluse kind of IT person that likes to throw up the hoodie, get my work done, and just get my metrics good for the year for a boss. I like to come in. I got to talk to a team. But networking, you think for this kind of career field, how important would you say that is?
Oh man, you're gonna get me on 2 or maybe 2 different tangents here. So first of all, I definitely think it's important, but also I don't think it is what a lot of people think. So I am an outgoing introvert, right? Which is, by the way, a masochistic kind of a thing because you're torturing yourself because you enjoy the extroversion to a degree, but it depletes your batteries as you do it. It's a very
I
weird
had
thing.
to bribe him to be on this channel.
And I'm legit cool. Like if you gave me an engineering task to sit down and do to this day, I'm very cool just working on my own and cranking through that kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So it's maybe a little different for me, and that gives me some empathy, I think, for the perspective I hear a lot, which is kind of like an over rotation to, uh, Andrew is telling me that I need to network, so I better read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I better get on LinkedIn. I better go to, happy hours. I mean, that's just not a lot of people, right? I do that stuff really well, and I've had to do it professionally, so it's fine. But I 100% can appreciate how people wired similarly to me, especially if they are less outgoing than I am, I can totally appreciate how that would all be unappealing. So this gets into a little bit of another pet peeve of mine about cybersecurity entry positions. Um, I think part of the deficiency or gap now is that the learning opportunity needs to come within the work environment, and people aren't even getting that opportunity to get into the work environment.
Yep.
And when they do, it's for stuff like traditional MSSPs, and we are not like HyeTech is not a traditional MSSP. Traditional MSSPs throw humans at the problem of scaling security operations. So they have SOC analyst 1, SOC analyst 2, SOC analyst 3, security engineer, security architect. It's a tiered hierarchical system. And if you are in as an entry level SOC analyst 1, you just get burned out, because all they're going to do is throw you the initial triage, and the minute something's of interest, you punt it to someone else. And in most environments, not all, like there's better places, but in most environments, they don't even get back to you and tell you what came of what you saw. So, hey, I saw this thing, this was noise and I got rid of it, but this other thing I think requires some investigation. Okay, cool. And you never hear anything back. Where's the learning opportunity?
Yeah.
Where's the networking opportunity to learn who within that organization you can learn from, right? So I'm not a fan of that model. We don't operate that way at HyeTech for good reason. If you're a security architects, your rock stars are the same people responsible for part of your sort of SOC analyst work. No better way to have really smart people heavily incentivized to automate and orchestrate everything they can, right?
Amen.
So you get better work that way. And then when you bring in someone to provide some SOC coverage for those people, I think the trick is, yes, they're going to be entry level and they're going to start with triage, but give them some reverse shadow time. So make it so that they see something, they don't know what to make of it, and they're going to punt it. But instead of punting it, they just bring someone in and they get to work alongside and learn from and listen to that person. Oh, yeah, this is what you found. This is how I'm going to go look at it. This is what I'm now looking at. This is what this makes me think. That's why I'm going to go here and do this, right? That's that learning opportunity by which shadow becomes, reverse shadow becomes you're now self-proficient, can do it. It also creates the space for you to learn who to network with in a natural way, like not on LinkedIn and not at a happy hour. You start figuring out who's who in the zoo. Some people, and a lot of people in cyber, fortunately, are really eager to share knowledge. Like everyone on my team at HyeTech, I can't take credit for this. I inherited a lot of these people. They're all really eager to see someone else learn, grow, and be successful. They're very eager to share knowledge and information. That's not true all the time. But if you're in an environment where you at least get the opportunity to stick with something and learn from someone else as you try to be involved in the solutioning,
Yeah.
you'll start figuring out some people are really going to help you in a way that's just you naturally following their work and getting smarter and better and faster, so that eventually you can do some of that work which offloads from that person, right? And that's a much more natural way. Like when I started in IT, it was in an outsourced technical assistance center back before those were managed like call centers. And that's how it worked. If you got a difficult ticket, you just pulled people in. And if you needed 2 or 3 people from different teams, you all got on a call and worked on it together. There was no punting the ticket, right? And I think that can be enough. But yeah, being high humility, low ego, to the point of being vulnerable, right? Like it sounds weird to mention that in the context of professional technical work, but if you're willing to be vulnerable and you're that low ego and high humility, you're gonna do well, because you're going to just naturally attract the people that are similarly disposed. And I will take 2 or 3 even mediocre people that communicate, collaborate, and share knowledge willingly over one rock star genius all day, any day, right? That growth you get, you almost make 1 + 1 = 3 when you have a team of people who are all actually interested in learning and growing together, sharing what they learn, and everyone learns faster. And the next thing you know, that learning curve is insanely steep because of the communication, right? And that all starts with the personality and the communication style and the networking. So I encourage people that are more introverted, like, don't think you have to go to happy hours. Build a decent LinkedIn profile, have a decent resume, but go to some events, join some local IT or cybersecurity community groups, and don't feel like you have to socialize more than you want to. Just showing up is enough sometimes. And then more than anything, look for an entry level job in IT, period,
Yeah.
right? end user support, like desktop support, can be a super awesome way to get all the basic foundational knowledge and some really sound basic professional skills. But it's also where you're going to start building that network.
Yep.
And that's, I think, to your point, Andrew, is you get to where you're 3, 4 years in, everyone is now on to other things, different places, and someone will remember you. And when you need to get that interview, they'll bump your resume to the top of the pile, right? And that's kind of how you get there. So
Yeah.
that's the networking aspect. And I always tell people, don't over rotate to like socializing beyond what you feel comfortable with.
Now, spot on the money. And I think that was a great tail end to our second to last question. So, Kevin, when you're not doing cyber, what do you like to do to relax? What happens when you unplug, the caps off, you're not talking cyber, you're not going to cons, you're not going to conferences. What do you get to do to relax?
That's a funny one. So as a father, right? And I'm surprised by this, but I really enjoy being a dad. And I did not know that going in. Like I was kind of on the fence. We'll see how this
It's going to be
goes.
50-50. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I just wasn't sure. And look, I'm not going to tell you it's not infuriating sometimes because it can be, but it's a lot of
Preach.
fun. And I enjoy, like, I fix stuff. Anything that's broken, I like to fix it. And kids break a lot of stuff, right?
Yep.
So a relaxing weekend for me might be me rebuilding some remote control cars for my son, right? Fixing some Nerf guns or modifying some Nerf guns for my daughter, right?
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
so that's all fun, but also no joke, as you get older, you find you need more and more physical activity. So if in doubt, man, if I'm stressed and tired and I really just cannot handle tech because I'm living in it, a hike, and I mean an
Nice. Okay.
aggressive hike, something hard, right?
And there's some good
Um,
hiking here in the valley.
yes, there is. Yes, there is. Yeah, there's a really good book. Well, there's a few of these, but there's one in particular that I find super fun that I think is really good for people that are entry level in IT or cyber and are going to need to learn how to stay sane. It's like 40 Ways to Be Miserable, I think is the name of the title. And it's, it's a satirical but really intelligently, thoughtfully laid out book that kind of takes you through like, here's all the things that you should do if you want to be miserable. And the point of it is that as you read them, you're going to notice like, oh, I do a lot of these things. Like I wake up in the morning and pull my phone out, immediately start looking at work stuff before I've even stepped outside, right? So they give you all of these things of like, yeah, if you want to be miserable, do this, and definitely don't do that, right? And it sounds funny because it's like that's almost like a spiritual guidance kind of a thing, but in IT and cyber, it's difficult. Cyber especially, it's difficult to stay constructive and sane and positive and be
Yeah.
able to play all in.
Burnout's real. Burnout's so
Burnout's
real.
a very real thing, right? And so some self-care goes a long way. And I think younger people especially, and I know this was true for me early in career, I would work crazy hours and be on call 24/7, 365, working projects. I mean, it was just a lot. And I didn't handle the self-care well. And I look at it in hindsight and realize if someone had given me a book like that one, I think I would have been much healthier and I would have thrived and done even better because I would have put up some basic boundaries, right? So the mentioning relaxing when you're not doing the work is actually pretty important because I also coach people that you'd be amazed. Your brain is working on stuff subconsciously when you're not aware of it. So if you run into some really complicated problem at work, and I've had this happen in very real ways, I can't figure out why this is broken this particular way and why we have this recurring problem that happens this way. Sometimes the way to solve it is to put it down and relax and go do something different.
Yep.
Your subconscious will be working on it. And I've literally had it happen where like you're in the shower or sometimes even sleeping and all of a sudden, eureka, I know what it is. I didn't look at this. It's probably that. I bet I could solve it this way. And you're like immediately running to a machine so you can go see if what you thought was correct, right?
You're at the
And
gym.
that only
Move,
happens if
move. I
you
gotta
create
get on the
the
computer
space.
real quick. It's
Yeah, move. Like, hang on, I gotta log into work real quick. It's a Saturday. No, I know, but I think I solved it. And that only happens if you give yourself the space. You create the space.
no, 100%. And Kevin, huge thank you, by the way. I know we had to reschedule this a few different times because of life and scheduling, but a huge thank you for coming on the channel. This was amazing as always. It's always great to get to talk to folks that have such a huge amount of knowledge in this field and kind of just seem to share their stories and kind of their information of what it might look like for folks trying to break in, those already inside the field, those looking to do those next pivots, and just kind of looking to get that insight. So as always, is a huge thank you for coming on the channel. I'm going to get you some awesome Ginger Hacker swag as a thank you. So I'll send you that link once we're done here. And last but not least, before we leave, last piece of advice you'd give someone that's trying to break into cyber.
Oh man, I think the biggest thing right now, and this is, 2, 3 years from now, I'm hoping I'd give you a different answer. Right now, I think the big thing is just keep your head up and don't get lost in there's so much, especially in cyber, where you have this tendency to fear uncertainty and doubt anyway, and that's just sort of the rotation. Then you look at like the modern hiring dynamics and all these filters in front of candidates and the fact that you can't even get into a face-to-face, right? If between all that and the news, I think if you're coming out of school, it would be really easy to just get disheartened, demoralized, like just down. And so the big thing I tell people is like, I guarantee you, like there's so much opportunity out there. There really is. And it's so much fun. I've enjoyed the vast majority of my career. And trust me, I've had terrible jobs. Like I have worked some really grinding, difficult jobs. But man, I have really thoroughly enjoyed my career. I feel like I know some really high quality humans because of my career. My relationships are very real and deep and substantive to me. And that I think was born out of my career, right? So there's all this goodness to be had. Yes, it's a scary world. Yes, the news can be scary. Yes, in cybersecurity, there's lots of reasons to be worried, right? But if you can just find the things that you gravitate towards that are interesting and put more energy back into your battery than deplete it, right? And just go pursue those things and embrace the beginner's mind. Like don't this is something that people my age start to lose that I'm really cognizant of. There's a real benefit to having zero expectations. You haven't done something before, so you have no idea how hard it's going to be. And I don't know where I'm going and I don't know what I'm doing. That's actually liberating. It's a super liberating and empowered position to work from. So just embrace that beginner's mind, let yourself be uncomfortable and be okay with being uncomfortable, admit you don't know stuff, and then just start pursuing knowledge voraciously, like anything that's of interest to you.
Yeah.
But above all, don't lose hope because I am convinced like we need to see more and more new people coming into the field, as diverse a talent pool as possible by every demographic and measure. And I would like to see lots of more young people at the, with seats at the table for discussions. I'm blown away by the talent that I see in some of the schools. Some of my recent hires that have been very young are very impressive people to me. There's nothing wrong with the current generation. So anyone older that says that is full of it.
Yeah.
Right. So that would probably be it, is just take all that and hopefully stay positive, keep your head up, and find what motivates you.
Well, awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for sticking around. As always, we'll catch you on the next episode of Breaking into Cyber.
Cool.